Directors meeting for August 5th, 2021. We're holding this in accordance with the Governor's Stay-at-Home Order Proclamation 2028 being held 100% remotely. This meeting is audio and video recorded. And will the clerk please read the roll call?
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Kim Daughtry.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Joe Marine. Okay. Councilmember Jared Mead. Councilmember Tom Merrill.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor John Nearing is excused. Labor Representative Lance Norton.
I'm here, Rachel, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sid Roberts.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councilmember Jan Schweddy.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Mayor Nicholas Smith is expecting to join the meeting in progress. Councilmember Stephanie Wright.
I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, thank you. Chair, we do have a quorum. I also see Councilmember Mike Gallagher, board alternate, on the call. So I'll note him for attendance. Thank you so much, Chair. That does conclude roll.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to have our first public hearing on the 2021-2026 Transit Development Plan. So the public hearing for today, I am going to open it right now. And we're going to take public comments on the TDP. So does anybody, I know that we have, we have 4 written public comments have been received. They were submitted by the City of Shoreline, Everett Transit, the City of Mukilteo, and Mr. Kunzler. They were routed to the board members prior to the meeting. And we do have one person signed up to speak, Mr. Joe Kunzler. Clerk, could you bring in Mr. Kunzler, please?
Mr. Kunzler is here. Permission to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Kunzler. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for having your video on. For the record, I'm wearing a fun public transit t-shirt because today is that got off word realignment, and for dignity's sake, because I feel an obligation, normally I wear a button-down shirt out of respect to Rachel and Rick and the staff. I'm wearing a tie today. So instead, I want to address the transit development plan. I sent you written comments last night. I apologize they came in last night. Just generally ask that the agency please support more, service around Painfield, but also build out more trips as able. Throughout the system. There was also a concern from the Disability Mobility Institute that I attempted to pass on to you in my comments about the need for longer span of service, which means earlier in the morning, later in the evening, and issues around connections. And I want to just flag that as a person with disabilities, the importance to focus on connecting people. You're an awesome service and you do great work, and I just want to maintain a positive tone. Also, I do want to bring to your attention that I fully endorse the zero emission bus study, and I fully endorse the redesigning the computer bus network to Linwood City Center. And I know I'm going to say this in general public comment, but I say during a TDP hearing, I am a bit concerned. There was not discussion about the Everett Transit Community Transit merger discussions. I'm very supportive of those discussions, and I want to make sure they happen. I'm also finally back to span of service. You can tell I haven't had time to write down my comments, so I'll stop here. I'm a bit concerned that that there's a problem connecting the multimodal terminal at Mukilteo Waterfront and then the Seaway Transit Center to get back to Everett and points beyond. I really hope that gets fixed. So again, just to summarize, thanks for all you do. Need more span of service, longer in the day, earlier in the day, later in the day. Need more service around Painfield and connect Mukilteo multimodal to Seaway. and also just, keep being awesome. So I'm going to stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kunzler. So I'm going to open up the opportunity for anybody else that's in the gallery to be able to speak. If you'd raise your hand so that I or Rachel can see you. So if you do want to speak on the TDP, we will also have, following this discussion, we will have regular public comment. But if you want to talk about the TDP, please raise your hand and let us know. Rachel, I see Joe Marine in you just got him, never mind.
Chair, I
No.
don't see any hands raised
Nope, I don't
for
see any either.
comments.
Okay, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the public hearing. So the public hearing for 2021-2026 transit development now is closed. The next final TDP plan will be, with comments, will be reviewed by the Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee at their August meeting. The final TDP is expected to come before the board at the September meeting. Is there any questions by the board or staff? Seeing none, we'll move on. So I will open up our public comments. We received 0 written comments for anything other than the TDP, and we do have Mr. Kunzler available to speak for another verbal comment. Mr. Kunzler, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will keep my comments to those 3 minutes. I apologize for earlier. It's been a very long and stressful day with realignment and then some breaking news that I attempted to email all of you on the COVID mess. But I want to start on a positive note because I know this is hard. I know this COVID stuff it's heartbreaking. We still have to talk about it. To be real honest with you, I'm heartbroken. And I'm sure you are annoyed and heartbroken too. But the fact you went back to virtual meetings against resistance, the fact that you are putting these meetings on YouTube is a credit to the staff, all staff. I don't want to name names because I only know 2 names involved, and that's just not fair, not right. We don't roll that way in the North. We recognize everyone or no one, if at all humanly possible. But this is a big deal that these meetings are going on YouTube so the public can see them. And this is very much appreciated. And now that we've protected the headquarters staff, we need to get after protecting the frontline staff, namely the operators and the maintainers. You will have received in your email today, and members of the media can email me at growernoise@gmail.com for that advice from the Snohomish County Medical Officer that there's a real problem with people masking up on your buses. We need to draw a line in the mud right now, making extremely clear that if you are not up to wearing a mask on a bus, you don't need to be riding the bus. Period. End of discussion. There needs to be a zero tolerance policy on this, because otherwise we're going to lose another operator, or we're going to have that virus on a bus and some maintainer is going to get it and their family is going to get the worst call they could ever get. Someone has to draw the line here. I can't stress enough how contagious this Delta variant is. I just cannot. I have to read these intelligence reports, and it's like I'm serving on Team Whidbey defending Hotline with Coopville all over again. It's that bad, this Delta. And if you don't believe me, that's great.
You got
Andy
about 30
Slab-
seconds, Mr. Kunzler.
Thank you. I'll wrap up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to conclude with this thought. You don't need to listen to me. You need to listen to your medical officer. You need to do your own research and check out Andy Slavitt's Preventable and Inside the Bubble podcast. You need to check out Dr. Nicole Baldwin on Instagram and all the other TikTok, other social medias. You need to be talking to your own doctors about this, but we really badly need to have everyone wear a mask when they're on public transit till this Delta variant's over. I am very grateful you got this. You're protecting your staff and their families, which is why I stepped up so hard about getting back on virtual meetings, was to protect the staff and their families. Okay? I owe them a great deal because what you guys have done is amazing, and you should be proud of yourselves as staff, and I will stop right there because I don't want to cross the line, start naming people. But thank you for listening, and I hope you can take these thoughts as positive, professional, and just positive professional encouragement to keep being awesome. Thank you, and let's get everyone masked wearing a bus, riding a bus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunzler. All right, moving on, we're going to go into presentations from the CEO, Mr. Engelfritz.
Great. Good afternoon again, members of the board and everybody who's attending today. We've got a couple of employee service recognitions today. So we're really excited to have two great, highly valued and long tenured employees with us today for recognition. I want to start with Jay Haas. Jay Haas just lit up his camera and he's sitting right there so we can all say hello and make him feel awkward. Jay is celebrating 25 years at Community Transit, which is just an enormous, enormous accomplishment. And we're so glad that he has stayed the course with us throughout his career. He started with Community Transit as a fueler, and he's worked his way up through our apprenticeship programs and the various different assignments he's had to his role today as maintenance instructor. So he's one of the key folks in the shop, making sure that we are engaging in training and education and knowledge transfer so that our folks in the pit know and are prepared to keep our vehicles running and keep them out there on the road safely. So that's just such a huge contribution to the organization. He's been a member of Community Transit's Employee Unity Team since its inception 20 years ago. And he has worked with his teammates to bring up about amazing community events over the course of that time. He's worked hard on our annual Show and Shine car show. He's worked on our luau barbecue. He's really invested himself in helping build a community here and a positive employee experience for all of our employees. He's a foodie. I'm told he is known for slicing pounds and pounds of onions. I hope he just didn't end up crying all night when he did that. But he's also a grill master. He mans the grill, flips the burgers. He's even developed a vegan barbecue sandwich for those who so choose. And as you can tell, he enjoys cooking. He cooks at home with his wife, Jennifer, for their two kids. You may know Jennifer, who's also a Community Transit employee and customer engagement group, and is heading up our Linwood pilot project. So it's great to have such a dynamic duo here at Community Transit. Jay, you're a dedicated employee and you've demonstrated an immeasurable commitment to the agency. So I congratulate you and salute you, and I encourage the board members to join me in that today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm sorry we're not able to do this in person. You know, we were almost there, but we're not quite there yet.
It's all good.
All right.
It's always good.
Thanks a lot. So
Thank
moving
you.
on to our other employee, Treva Kozlowski, the incomparable Treva. Treva is also celebrating her 25th year at Community Transit this year. And like Jay, she has walked the employee journey over that last 2.5 decades. She's started out at the bottom of the ladder as a coach operator trainee way back in 1996 and moved up quickly into a coach operator position, and then quickly after that transitioned into instruction. And she's been there since 2003 in a leadership role, training staff, developing training programs for the organization, and overseeing our investment in making sure that our employees are equipped and prepared to get out there on the road and do the work. She never forgets where she started at CT, and all that experience she's accumulated over the years is just invaluable to her classes, to the coach operators she engages in refresher training with, and everybody else who's touched by the programs that she oversees. She has grown with the agency. She has brought her passion for safety and transportation to the employees who provide our service. She's also very focused outside the building. I'll get to the fun facts in a minute, but I think what distinguishes Treva's leadership here is that she sees both the details and the big pictures. She serves on multifunctional committees. She connects with the programs and the system for elevating employee knowledge, but also with the individual employees themselves. And she's recognized for that. She's earned numerous team and individual awards. She's been on the front line, not only of training, but other key initiatives like our COVID response and developing our COVID care packages, serving as our liaison with the Snohomish County Health District as they started trying to figure out how to deliver vaccinations, leading efforts to implement our learning management system, which has been a big initiative over the past year and a half. On the fun side, if she's on PTO, you might be surprised to hear that she could be out hunting for dinosaur bones and rocks, and geodes and fossils with her family. She is greatly respected and loved by her employees. Every year on her birthday, another fun fact, apparently her employees surprise her with some kind of birthday celebration. I think a recent one was a puppy party with inflatable blow up puppies. So she loves her grandkids. She's got 3 right now and counting. And she looked after her first grandson as a toddler when his parents were deployed for military service. So Treva does it all, and we're so lucky to have her. So thank you, Treva. Congratulations on 25 years at CT.
It's been easy. Wouldn't have made another choice. Best place.
That's our luck. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, thank you, Treva, and also probably please thank your family members for their service. I
I will.
appreciate that. Jan, very good. It's nice to have both of you on for 25 years, and hopefully you'll have another 25 coming up. That would be great. That
Thank
way
you.
we don't, yeah, that way we don't want you to retire. We just want you to keep going. Everybody seems to be retiring around me, and I can't retire yet, so I don't want that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel, I understand we have somebody else joining us on the board.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to note for the record that we have Council Member Kristiana Johnson here on the meeting, and she's filling in for Mayor John Nearing as our large cities representative today. So I wanted to note that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, and welcome, Kristiana. All right, moving on, we need the Chief Executive Officer report, and I don't know, I guess it's more than 3 minutes. We'll see.
I will do my best. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So moving on with the executive report, I'll start with the internally focused items. On the employee front, our health and safety protocols, as has been referenced, remain in place. And moving today's board meeting back to Zoom is a sign of how we're continuing to manage the changing conditions presented by the pandemic. We had 3 cases reported in July, none so far in August, which is encouraging because cases in the county are going up. On the vaccination front, we're currently 65.5% vaccinated as a workforce. We continue to communicate the importance of vaccinations to our employees as well as our vaccine incentive program. We are considering more proactive measures to engage with employees who remain uncertain about vaccination, and we are monitoring very closely what other major employers, both inside and outside the transit industry, are doing to increase vaccination levels and help control the spread. I suspect this is a topic we will continue to monitor well through the end of the year. As has been mentioned earlier, I emailed you earlier in the week. We've returned to requiring masks for employees in our indoor public spaces, at our office buildings and shops, at the Merrill Creek and Cache Park. The federal mask mandate remains in place for public transit until mid-September, and we are continuing to enforce that as well. I would observe that we are continuing to see mask compliance across all our services in the high 90% point level. There is some variation depending on the type of service, but overall we're continuing to see quite high compliance. On the employment front, we are almost at full employment versus our force reductions early last year. We only have 2 people left on the recall list who've been on furlough, a coach operator instructor who's currently actually working as a coach operator, and then another part-time coach operator who is still on the laid off list. But we are in position for our October service change and fully staffed at this point. Speaking of operations, ridership does remain low, but signs are emerging that we're starting to see some upward trends in boardings, especially in our commuter service. We've seen some routes with a doubling of service from our low pandemic levels at the end of last year. So that's positive. We are operating now at full capacity. We've removed all the signage and taping from the vehicles so that we can utilize all the seating and standing areas of our vehicles. And as I mentioned, with that, we're continuing to enforce the mask requirement. As I reported last month, we are in the midst of budget season. During this month in August, staff will be reviewing each of our departmental level budgets and rolling it up to prepare to submit to you next month for consideration. And so we're doing that work now with an eye toward maintaining sustainable growth into the future. Looking externally, a couple of legislative items of note. We're seeing all the reports you're probably seeing about the potential for a bipartisan infrastructure deal with a 5-year surface transportation reauthorization. So that's all very encouraging news. Obviously, there's a long way to go on that, but there are significant investments in that legislation potentially for transit and potentially for our interest in lower and zero emission vehicles. So that's something we'll continue to watch very closely. We are also closely engaged in regional discussions about the American Recovery Act funding. That conversation is beginning to heat up at PSRC. So we will keep you posted on how that goes. And we are starting the process of developing our legislative priorities for the next legislative session. So we will be working with Mary Beth and DeVore and following up with some of our legislators from our PTBA area to help shape that program and share it with you later in the year. Regionally speaking, we are beginning to prepare in earnest for the October service change, October 2nd service change, including the opening of the Northgate light rail segment. So light rail to Northgate opens October 2nd, and our fall service change officially starts on October 3rd. We are preparing to launch a series of communications and outreach initiatives to inform our customers and our stakeholders what we are doing to prepare for that, how our routes will change, and what riders will need to know to be able to take advantage of the opportunity this opening presents. We're working closely with Sound Transit on an activation plan that includes coordinated efforts between our respective ambassadors and staff to support customers before and during and after light rail launches. So it's very exciting. We're looking forward to administering these changes. We're also looking forward to seeing what we can learn that will help us as we prepare for the Linwood opening a couple of years down the road. Speaking of Sound Transit, Mayor Smith is not here because she is attending a Sound Transit board meeting where they are in earnest considering some changes and refinements to the Sound Transit 3 plan. that would affect the timelines for some of the Sound Transit 3 investments. We have been working closely with the 3 Snohomish County board members for Sound Transit, Mayor Smith, Councilmember Roberts from Everett, and Executive Summers to support their efforts to advocate for Snohomish County. We have signed on to a letter supporting some amendments that Executive Summers is offering in today's meetings. At today's meeting, I think there's a copy of that in your packet if you haven't seen it. But we worked through SKIT to help shape that approach and inform their engagement with their Sound Transit Board colleagues. It's likely that this realignment plan will affect the timeline for some of all of the projects across the region. But adopting the program will create some certainty that will allow the work to proceed, planning and doing the environmental studies and the preliminary design work to define the Everett Link extension. So that's very exciting. If that does go forward, obviously that will have implications for us working with Sound Transit to shape not only how our network integrates with that project, and particularly if the terminus ends up somewhere around Seaway Transit Center, but also helping site light rail maintenance facility somewhere in that part of the corridor. So lots going on down south, and we, as you, are waiting for news from Mayor Smith. So, Mr. Chair, without further ado, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Engelfritz. I appreciate that. Next on the agenda is committee reports. I'll start with the executive committee. Executive committee.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, Labor Representative Norton.
Go ahead,
I have
Mr. Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for our Rick. Rick, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Anything new with the on again, off again discussions with Everett Transit?
Yes. I briefly touched on this at our workshop a couple weeks ago, kind of recapping the direction that the city staff received from the council and the mayor to reach out to us to talk about how we might approach planning a consolidation. And so we've had some initial discussions at the staff level about a potential process for studying the issues and figuring out how to address them in a joint fashion with coordination between both entities. I would characterize those discussions, Mr. Norton, as preliminary. And there's a lot of work to do to sort of bring some focus to how we would go about developing a consolidation plan. So our goal at the staff level is to, put an approach together and bring it back to the respective policy boards for some discussion about how they'd like to proceed. But we don't have a specific timeline yet for completing those tasks.
Okay, thank you, Rick. I appreciate your response.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Any other questions for the CEO from the rest of the board? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and move on with my executive committee report. We met on Thursday, July 15th. Councilmember Schweddy, Councilmember Marine, Mayor Naring, and I attended. Staff provided a report on the agency diversity, equity, and inclusion program. The CEO provided his report, which much of that was included today. The committee discussed the APTA annual conference attendance in November and decided to offer the opportunity to board members to participate. I understand that we have an email that came out yesterday, I believe, and asked if anybody wanted to participate. We have one person that has asked to participate. If any of the other board members is interested in going to Orlando for the APTA conference, please let Rachel know. I will be picking who's going out of the list of those that want to go. I believe the budget has room in the normal budget for 2 board members to go, but we can certainly adjust that to as many as want to go. Just so everybody knows what we're talking about. The other thing that we need to discuss about that is, of course, if COVID rules change, we don't know what's going to happen with the APTA conference. Right now, they are going to put it on, but of course that could change. So they have already stated that they will refund any monies that are put in from us in advance if we do that, and we'd be fine. We'd be held not accountable for any changes to the COVID. So if you want to go, even though it's still kind of gray, let us know and we'll make that determination who's going to go. The next thing was the next executive committee meeting is scheduled for August 19th at 11:30. And with that, we'll move on to the Finance Performance and Oversight Committee. Councilmember Schweddy.
Okay, thank you. The Finance Performance and Oversight Committee met on Thursday, July 15th, 2021 via Zoom and Community Transit Planning Conference Room. CEO Rick Eldenfritz, Director of Administration Jerry Beardsley, agent staff and board members Tom Merrill, Sid Roberts, and I attended. On the consent agenda is approval of June 2021 expenditures and payroll items D through H. Reports we had that day, the 2021 annual audited comprehensive financial report. The committee discussed the 2020 annual audited comprehensive financial report. Community Transit earned its 26th consecutive clean audit. I think we need to celebrate that, guys. Copies of the report are included in your board packet. The first quarter 2021 financial report unaudited. The committee discussed the first quarter financial report as of March 31st. Operating revenues were slightly ahead of budget at 28.8% of budget. Operating revenues totaled $52.9 million. As of March 31, all categories of operating expenditures came in under budget at 22.5% of budget. Operating expenses totaled $34.9 million. Copies of the report are included in your board packet. And the best news of all is our June 21 sales tax report. Community Transit collected approximately $15.2 million in June in sales tax revenue, exceeding the admitted budget by 41%. This is for purchases made in April. Copies of the report are included in your board packet. The diesel fuel report, year-to-date, Community Transit paid an average of $2.04 per gallon for diesel fuel compared to the 2021 amended budget amount of $2.07 per gallon. The next Finance Performance and Oversight Committee meeting is scheduled at 2 p.m. Thursday, August the 19th, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schweddy. And next would be the Strategic Alignment Capital Development Committee, Councilmember Marine.
Thank you, Chair Duffy. The Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee meeting was held remotely over Zoom on Wednesday, July the 21st at 2 p.m. The meeting was attended by a really awesome group. There was myself, Councilmember Tom Merrill, Labor Representative Lance Norton, Mayor Nicholas Smith, and Councilmember Stephanie Wright. The committee reviewed and forwarded 2 items to today's consent agenda, which you will see there. The first is the RFQ number 2017-079. Is a task order awards 100% design of the facility master plan phase 5 vehicle storage and training facility to Land Development Consultants, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $516,220.38. There's a lot of discussion over that 38 cents. The amount is considered fair and reasonable, and it falls below the independent governmental cost estimate. The second one is RFP 2021-034 and awards the agency's long-range plan update to Fair and Peers. The board was briefed on this topic at the July 15th quarterly workshop. I know you all remember that. And the updated plan will provide essential vision and framework aligning growth and development of transit in Snohomish County to year 2050. The contract has not to exceed amount $355,048 and is considered fair and reasonable. There were no action items forwarded to today's agenda, and the committee heard a brief update on the Swift Orange Line. The next meeting of the Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee is Wednesday, August the 18th at 2 p.m. For convenience and safety reasons, we unanimously agreed to continue the meetings remotely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Marine. Are there any questions for any of the committees? Seeing none, I'll move on. Next would be my report, chair's report. I actually don't have anything to actually report. I did make the decision to go back to 100% Zoom for our meetings for now, following quite a few things that are happening around us with discussions with staff and the CEO. We will be continuing this for the next little while anyway. I'm open for discussion on that from any of the board members if you want to contact me. But I've also been in contact with the Snohomish County Health District. I happen to have a personal friend that is working there as a director, Sean Frederick, council member Sean Frederick. I talk to him often about what's going on, and the numbers are not looking good. I don't know if you all saw this report, but there's only 5 ICU beds open in Snohomish County right now. So that's not good, and the numbers continue to trend upward. So we're waiting for the governor to make some decisions here. I know he's looking at one thing he's looking at is mask mandate for all state employees. And I don't know if he's going to make that a mandate for everybody, but I think that that decision is going to be made after the weekend, where they look at the numbers on Monday and decide any further actions that need to be taken for the COVID. I do know that all the health districts right now are very worried about what's going on with the Delta variant. So that ends my report. I'll open it up to the board. For board communications. Anybody?
Mr. Chair, I think we still need to do the consent agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, thank you, Sid. I appreciate that. I did miss that. All right, so we do have a consent agenda. It's been talked about by both of the other committees. I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Well, so moved then.
And
Thank you,
second,
Mr. Roberts and Mr. Marine. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I would entertain a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Roberts, for pointing
Yeah,
out my
You bet.
foibles sometimes.
Oh, well, I'm good at that.
Now we'll go back to the board communications. Let's start with Mr. Roberts. We'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Chair. You know, this COVID business, yeah, I think there was Loudon Wainwright III wrote a song a number of years ago. It's been a hard day on the planet. And I would just say it's been a hard couple of years on the planet. I lost 2 of my neighbors this last week, people I've known for 25 years, one to Parkinson's, but one to the Delta variant of COVID. Man was perfectly well, and within 2 weeks, he was no longer with us. So I think we do need to take this serious. I'm fully supportive of being back on Zoom with our meetings. I think that's the right decision. I'm glad to see we're live on YouTube. I think that's also a good decision. And thank you for the agency for the work you're doing to keep staff safe and everyone safe. I mean, this is kind of an unknown thing, isn't it? And so thank you for all that you're doing. And yes, that would be one last thing. We had a National Night Out here in Stanwood on Tuesday. We have National Night Out everywhere, but we had one here too at Stanwood. We had about 700 or 800 people out, and I don't think anyone was masked up. And so we just have to be careful. And so I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Councilmember Schweddy.
You know, Kim, I think I'm good. Our national night out went really good. Me and the mayor and administrator, and we were driven by our police chief, and we went around to all the areas. And I think the masking thing was because everybody was outdoors. There was nothing that was indoors. And to be honest, I would feel a little bit more comfortable if they included some of the indoor things. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. It has been a tough time. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schweddy. Councilmember Marine.
Well, I don't have much other than, since it was brought up, I also attended the National Night Out. It was interesting, you know, we haven't any rain in a while, and all of a sudden there were a couple of big drops coming down. It was, you were like looking at the sky, what is that? It's crazy. And like you, yeah, probably most of the people were, there's a couple wearing masks, but I'm also assuming that most of the people who are going out or willing to go out in a crowd like that, hopefully have been vaccinated. And certainly I had, and yeah, I was there with a lot of the first responders, which I assume were as well. But yeah, people get vaccinated. Let's whip this thing.
Thank you, Councilmember Marine. Councilmember Merrill.
Yes, speaking of the COVID-19, the Snohomish Party Town here, where we have an event almost every week, we're watching that very closely. We just had a big soccer tournament here this past weekend, and we're looking to have a celebratory open of the town in August 20th, and now we're not quite sure how that's going to go. So we're being wary of it and watching it closely. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Merrill. Councilmember Wright.
I don't have anything to report. I just want to thank you all for being so diligent with the new strain of Delta and realizing the potential impacts and just being proactive. So thank you. And I'm so sorry to hear about your neighbor, Sid. But I do thank you for sharing those stories, because those are the things that get through to people. So anyway, just thank you all.
Thank you, Councilmember Wright. Labor Representative Lance Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, I wanted to say to Mr. Kunstler, who I do appreciate, and I think many people do appreciate his support of community transit and all of the community transit employees. But regarding what Mr. Kunstler said regarding the masks, of course, we want everyone to get on board with the mask on. As a matter of fact, all signage on all routes does flash mask mandatory. But I can tell you, having driven for 36 years prior to advancing my career as far as the union went, it should be an ask once and do not argue. Things go south real quickly, especially in these days with the stress that so many people are incurring. So we support our operators. Of course we do. But ask once, don't argue, do not pursue. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you for this opportunity. I don't have anything to add at this time.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Gallagher.
Nothing this afternoon, just ditto on the COVID.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Did I miss anybody? Good, my check marks are good then. I'll get back to my thing. We do not have an executive session as I understand it, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hendricks. And is there any other business to bring before the board? Anybody? Going once, going twice? Crickets, got it. Well, then I'm going to call for an adjournment. Thank you all for coming. It was great seeing you all. It's easier actually because you can see everybody at the same time, right?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your leadership and thanks to the rest of the board members for rolling with the changes here.
Thank you very much to all the staff. You're doing great work. I appreciate you every day. Thank you very much.